up, mediums? Welcome to The Writer's Journey. I'm your host, Lauren Moore, and with me is the marvelous Kaylee Williams. We're two authors on a journey to learn more about writing with you, the audience. So thank you for joining us. This episode's book spotlight is Writer's Block by Hank Garner, which is apropos because tonight we're talking about Writer's Block with Hank Garner. Our guest tonight is the author of Bloom, Mulligan, The Witching Hour, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and Writer's Block, and has contributed to several anthologies. He also hosts a weekly podcast called Author Stories, where he interviews successful authors each week about writing in the creative process. His interview roster is gaining on 800 authors to date, including Brandon Sanderson, Jim Butcher, Terry Brooks, and a number of keystroke mediums. Tonight, we're turning the tables on him and asking him all the questions. Hank Garner, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me tonight. I've been really looking forward to it.
We've been looking forward to it for about a month, and we're so excited that it's finally happening.
It's super special because we didn't have a show yesterday because Thanksgiving and all the food and passing out from comas of turkey and everything else, and super special Friday. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's behind us. Now we're looking forward to Christmas and beyond that to 2020. And all of the excitement that we've got planned, in our audience. We have books that we want to write. I was talking to a new author today. He's a hopeful author. His name is Andre Brown, so a shout out to him. He's working on a romance. But we've got big plans, all of us, for 2020. And one of the ways that we can accomplish those plans is by breaking through writer's block. And since you have talked to so many authors, I know you've got all the tips and tricks and stories about writer's block. You even wrote the book on it. So we're going to talk about it tonight. So
excellent. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
What's that?
What are you up to recently?
What am I up to recently? Well, podcasting just about every day. Finishing up the first book in a trilogy for Athon Books. The book is called The Babylon Gate, which is the first book in a trilogy, hopefully coming out, pretty soon from Athon as soon as I get this turned in. It's kind of a, Han Solo meets Stargate kind of a vibe.
Ooh.
A lot of fun, space opera-ish, more, space adventure.
Wow.
Very nice.
A rogue main character, but you're going to worlds quickly through Stargate. You're kind of getting rid of all that space-time travel trouble, right?
Yeah.
With Stargate.
Yeah, and of course, at the heart of it is a kind of a noirish mystery.
Oh, this just keeps getting better, man.
Yeah.
Just adding layers.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
think Jim Butcher in a kind of a sci-fi adventure world.
Wow, you're saying all of my favorite things.
Right.
And check, and we should probably just buy it right now.
Yeah.
So you're saying this should be available maybe early 2020?
I hope. Yeah.
All right, y'all. Keep your fingers crossed. Early 2020, Babylon of all the favorite things.
Yep. The Babylon Gate. This will be the first book in the series is tentatively called. I'll say that, but anyway, the first book is called The Babylon Gate.
So, Hank, take us into your writer's den. What does your writer's process look like when you're writing this book, or just in general? What's your general writer's process?
Well, that's what does my writer's process look like? I'm pretty simple. I tend to be more of a pantser than I am a plotter, and sorry, Josh, just it's the way I tend to be more like, follow the Dean Wesley Smith school of writing into the dark. But I'm not quite all the way there. I usually know where I'm going. I have a good idea of my characters. Things aren't just coming, just out of nowhere. I generally have a plan of where I'm going. I just don't know how I'm going to get there most of the time. And that's where the fun for me comes.
Well, this sounds like the perfect setup for talking about writer's block. Because even when you do have a really set in stone plan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you could still run into those parts where like, oh, I really didn't think through how this could all mesh together. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
So what does writer's block feel like when it strikes you? And then the follow-up question would be like, how do you break through it?
there we go. Lauren's
Well,
got me back.
that's a really good question. Writer's block. Some people will say that writer's block doesn't exist, and that a plumber doesn't show up and say I can't go to work today because I have plumber's block. And that's a cute thing to say, and I understand the meaning behind it. Is that if you're a professional, you show up and you do the work every day, and I get that. But sometimes things happen, and you're just stuck, and it really comes from doubt, not trusting yourself, not trusting your creative voice to understand that you do have what it takes to get through the story. And a lot of times it's that. It's not that you can't do the work. It's that you don't trust yourself to do the work. And I think that's where a lot of writer's block comes from. So, it comes down to, maybe trying something different. If you're obsessing over this story, go do something completely different for a little bit and just let your creative voice flow again. I think that's the key for a lot of situations.
So what are some of the things that you do to break yourself out of that mode?
Well, one thing that I do is when I get to a point where I don't know what's going to happen with a character, or if I'm making the right choices, I find some way to torture my character more, and that almost always lends itself to um, finding a solution. Because if you find something worse to do to that character, there's a certain joy that comes from that. And writers love to torture their characters, so that's one thing that I go to, is how can I screw up this character's life even more, and that usually avails itself to all kinds of opportunities.
So you've got the Schadenfreude going on. You've got the theme in your character suffering.
Yep.
It's also to see how they get out of it.
Right. Exactly.
To change.
Yeah.
Kayleen, do you ever do that with your characters when you get stuck in the plot? Like just throw more trouble and trauma at them?
Actually, yeah, I was about to comment that it's a slightly different take currently in MLO, that are Marines Luck and Ura, that Frisbee and I are working on. There's a part where it was kind of it was bogging down. It was saying all the right things, but it was just like, oh, for the love of God, get it over with already. And I could not figure out how to not make it that way, because that information needed to be there. So I kept thinking, how can I make this more exciting? How can I make this less boring? So yeah, I made one character a little bit more deranged in that scene, and all of a sudden it's a little bit more chaotic and what the fuck's going on, and then it bridged to all the other pieces to fit together. So yeah, threw more trauma at them, and it worked.
More chaos always works. That
all the chaos.
Yeah, if things are working out too smoothly for your character, and you are answering all of the questions a little too easily, you need to up the ante for your characters. And sometimes it's writer's block is not that you're stuck at the story; it's that you don't trust yourself to write yourself out of these problems. And sometimes you just have to go to the thick of it. And sometimes it means starting a new story altogether. Open up a new document and just start writing. Get yourself out of this headspace for a little bit. Find someone else to torture, and that works a lot of times too. And some good stuff has come from those.
I plot, and one of the reasons I plot is because I get stuck a lot in my scenes. So if I know what's coming up down the pike for my characters, I can just put in brackets, a quick summary, and then skip to the next scene, and maybe that one I get excited about and I can write. So, and then I'll just keep on, skipping and then going back and filling in. So it makes like a patchwork of paragraphs and scenes. That helps. One way I get stuck though is I think about something Sean Coyne at the Story Grid said. He said, if your first plot solution is probably too easy and too simple, try coming up with 10 plot solutions, and 13, 14, 15, maybe the 15th one will be something new, fresh, and interesting. So then I torture myself, trying to come up with something different and new. Do you have that?
Well, that's I was going to ask you. When you plan out things like that,
Mm.
do you ever worry about um, losing the tension in a scene or um, in a tense plot point because you've
Mm.
already thought through it? Do you ever worry that it's too easy for the reader?
No,
No.
because yeah, no, I don't. Since I know where it's going, then I can go to that scene and really put myself in the character's head and focus on imagining what they're feeling and imagining what they're seeing and they're hearing. Um, I don't need to worry about where the plot's going. I've already got that sorted. Now I can just totally focus on what it feels to be them. Sometimes I'll get up and move myself. I've got like a little windowsill that kind of has a ledge, and I'll take a pad of paper when I get really stuck, sit in the windowsill, and kind of handwrite out that scene. And that's gotten me unstuck a couple times.
That I actually really like that. That's another way to kind of look at writer's block is, you already know where you're going, but you have to fill in all these tiny little bridges, and they're things that you don't necessarily think about when you're first thinking of the story. It's those tiny character arcs, those small moments in a character's storyline where you're like, ooh, this would be really great to push out this one thing about this character. Maybe I could leave a breadcrumb about their mom in the beginning, and then here we could have it come to fruition because it's going to link up with the main plot point, and that's going to help me shovel this along because that's going to add tension to what's currently happening because right now it's boring. That's another way to get through the writer's block is adding more sometimes can be a good thing.
Right. One thing I like to do, well, I don't like to do it. This is not something I do very often, but it has worked, is to write scenes out of order.
I always
And
do that.
yeah, my brain doesn't work very well that way, but I talked to Diana Gabaldon a few years ago on my show, and she talked about that she just writes just whatever scene comes to her, and then when she's got a whole collection of scenes, then she figures out how to stitch them together, and that just makes me ultra neurotic, and that I couldn't deal with that, but I have been kind of written myself up against a wall and just couldn't figure out what to do. And then I thought, well, I could see this character doing this, and then go write a completely different scene, same character, same circumstances, but maybe down the road. And then I've given myself a new problem to solve in how do I get them from where they are to this future thing. And then it opens up a whole, new story thread. And that's something fun to do if you can handle the neuroses.
Yeah, I call that Frankensteining.
Yeah.
When I have to go into Frankenstein mode, then I know that there is something about the story or the pacing or the actual scenes and how they're built. There's something inherently wrong, and it's just not settling right. So I have to go in and piece by piece, I deconstruct it. I deconstruct it back into beats, and then I take those beats and I rip them to shreds, and then I stitch them all back together, write new bridges, and then voila. After a bunch of sleepless nights, heartache, a lot of coffee, and tears. Just that easy.
I love it.
Now, B. Michael Stevens, he has a question for us. Writer's block to me is when you aren't feeling it. Every word is a struggle and nothing sounds right. I usually walk away and come back after a break. What does Hank think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it just doesn't, you don't feel like the character. And for me, I have to really get inside my character's head. Especially the series I'm writing now, I'm writing it in first person. And my book Writer's Block was written first person present tense, which I'd never done before. But that was like, you have to really be in the character's head to pull that off. And sometimes I just didn't feel like Stu Remington, the main character. So I have to go do something else and come back when I did feel like Stu. And now everybody doesn't have that luxury, but yeah, getting up and walking away and going doing something else is always an option. Now the challenge is, every day we could not feel like doing it. So what do you do to motivate yourself just on an average day, not on a day where you're maybe dealing with stuff and you just can't get in the headspace, but what do you do every day to motivate yourself? And that's what it all comes down to, is how do we show up every day and do the work?
So for you, what is that? How do you motivate yourself every day to show up? Discipline.
Well, one thing, I host a podcast where I talk to writers every day, and that is greatly motivating when, when you're talking to someone who, has 35 million books in print, and they talk about their writers process. And, the thing that I've learned, over all of these is all of these people are just regular people like you and me. And they get up and they have the same fears and the same foibles that we all have. They're just at a different place along the journey than I am. And for me, that's incredibly motivating, is the humanization of it, seeing that these are people just like I am. And that helps me show up every day because, I'm on the same journey. I'm just at a different place.
So for viewers, listeners out there, if you can't start a podcast, you're just like, that is not for me. I can't talk to a bunch of authors on podcasting, video, not video. Join some writers groups.
Yeah.
Get talking with people. I mean, that's another way to immerse yourself in, the headspace of other people who think just like you do.
Right. Exactly. And that's been the biggest joy for me, is meeting all of the people that I've met through the podcast. I mean, all of the KSM family I met, through podcasting. And, you meet one author and you form a relationship, and then they're like, hey, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And then before you know it, you've got this huge network of people who are all on that same, journey that you are.
Yeah, I'm trying to think in my head right now, what are some other ways to help the author community? I mean, podcasting is great. You were talking about how you do the podcast so that you can meet people, so that you can meet authors. And that's Kaylee and I, we love doing that too. We love having you. Because we feel like we're best friends now. Like next time I see you, like, hey,
So good.
Yeah. Well, that's the entire reason I do the podcast, is that, I started writing my first book and I wanted to meet other people that did this. And, I've always felt like if you wanted to be really good at something, you should surround yourself with other people that are really good at the thing you want to be good at. And so I said, well, I'll start a podcast, because that way I'll get to talk to all these people and pick their brain. And, 800 folks later, that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And if you want to catch all those stories, Author Story Podcast, that's where you can hear them.
Yep.
So many great interviews there, and you can hear all these conversations Hank had, and you can get them all now. You can hear them too.
And I do want to add to, how do you just get up and do it? Because there are so many mornings where, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I probably went to bed at midnight the night before, because, writing. And I'm just like, God, I just want to sleep a little bit more, just a little bit more. And I'm just like, no, you have to do this. You have to do that. You are going to lose 3 hours of writing time that you cannot make up if you don't get up right now and at least get some water and open up your computer or pull out a pad of paper. It's a conviction that you have to tell yourself, no, I'm not going to go back to sleep. I need to write these words, or I need to reread this scene, or I need to flesh out this, whatever it is. And you do it.
Yep. Bill Frisbee said in the chat, and I'm sorry, guys, I don't have the chat open where I can respond, but he said that when he gets writer's block, he reads a bad book. And that's actually that's really great advice. The one thing that a bad book does for you is shows you that anybody can do this. And if they can do it, so can I. And I actually love that. Look at the things and not just to, pick on another author or something, but look at things that you would do differently. If I read this, I read a book not long ago, and it was a historical mystery thriller. And there was a scene where some Knights Templar were having a meeting in a castle in, the Dark Ages. And I was really, I wanted to know where the story was going. I was all engaged. And then someone used the word guy like 15 times in this conversation. Like, the guy on the left said this, and it just completely blew me out of the story. I was like, what? But it was a good opportunity for me to say, if I'm ever writing, a story written in 1100 AD, be be historically, factual, get your nomenclature right, all of that. It was a learning opportunity. So yeah, read a bad book for a lot of different reasons, but that's a great thing to think of for sure.
Well, and it also, like you were saying, that we tend to idolize authors.
Yeah.
It humanizes them and reminds us this is just another person, and you in the audience, you are another person. You've got a story to tell too. You've got an imagination. You've got time. Just keep plugging through with it. But I really like that point about seeing what's not working in a book and thinking through why it's not working, and then figuring out how you can fix that aspect, fix that angle, and make it really better in your book.
Yeah,
I agree.
Now, Chuck, see Stephen Manley, he has.
I just pulled his up too.
Oh, sweet, yeah, level.
Yeah.
Okay, he says, what does Hank think about the notion that sometimes writer's block can be attributed to writer what you write what you have to rather than want you want?
So like when you're committed to a series and there's a new shiny thing over here that you'd rather be doing, I think maybe that's what Chuck's getting at, is that when you get bogged down, in a commitment that has lost its luster, maybe it's not as fun anymore, and something else might be. And yeah, I'd love to hear the answer to that, Chuck, because I think it happens to everybody.
How to fight shiny syndrome?
Yeah. I think it just comes down to, learning to, honor the commitments that you made. Maybe that commitment is to a publisher, maybe it's to your reader base that you've already formed a relationship with. I don't know. It's just that's one of those things. It's just being an adult forces you to do some things that are not fun sometimes. I don't know. I'd love to hear everybody else's to that, because I don't have a great answer for that.
Well, I do know that I've seen a lot of authors who are just like, well, I have this new idea, but I have this book that I still need to finish, and da 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 da.
Yeah.
But I can't get this idea out of my head. So quickly take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, write a quick 1-page beat, do a quick opening, write down the characters' wants and needs, giant sunset, big dragon, big booms, going to explode the universe, whatever it is. And just get that part out of your head, and then go back to what you have to do, what you need to do, because you have that deadline. And then when you come back to those notes, if they're still fancy and new and you want to pursue them, then you can pursue them then, because you don't want to put too much on your plate, because I have overbooked myself before. I do not recommend it to anybody. It is a nightmare. Try not to overbook yourself. It can get crazy fast.
I have a folder on my desktop on my computer that's just story ideas, and some great idea comes, and I'll write up a page just like you said, and I save it, and I give it a provocative title, and it just sits there until one day I need an idea. And that's what I don't get, that some people can't figure out an idea to write. I literally have more ideas than I'll ever be able to get to, and I know every writer I've ever talked to is the same way. They just don't realize it. I mean, story ideas are everywhere, but figuring out which one of those ideas kind of rises to the top and becomes the idea, that's where the magic happens.
And it could be that the book you're laboring on, has lost its luster for you. But if you keep on hacking away at it, it'll come back. That excitement will come back. Maybe there's a plot twist that your subconscious hasn't spoken to you yet. And if you keep working at that scene, or in my case, call up Kayleen and start talking about the plot, call up your writer's buddy and start talking about the plot, then that special idea will come, and that'll give your excitement back again for that story you're working on.
Well, and maybe if you're not excited about the story you're working on anymore, maybe you're being too nice to your characters. Maybe you are not putting them in jeopardy enough. Maybe the the challenge is to find something horrible to do to them, and then then the joy comes back of, okay, now let me write them out of this. Maybe.
Yeah, because if there's not a problem going on, if there's not some kind of terror or fear, whether it's external, internal, if there's not something not lining up, then it gets stale and static. And it's nice to stare at a calm ocean, but we want the rising seas and the lightning and the giant dragon bursting out of the waters and all that.
Yeah.
Give us that.
But you need some calm seas to let your readers catch their breath, and then
just don't let it lag.
Then summon the Kraken. Yeah,
that's true. I got an email from an author recently. He's written like 150 books, and I just read one of his manuscripts. He said that he wrote it through one of the hardest periods of his life. That his son passed away when he started writing it, and then his dad was struggling with illness while he was writing it. He passed away, and he got through that book anyway. And I cannot imagine that. Like, I cannot imagine going through even a 10th of that. That would give me writer's block. Like any of those struggles. So how do you write through, keep writing through hard times? Maybe it's that discipline muscle that's kicking in again. I don't know.
Or maybe the hard time. Well, I'll give you a personal example. The book Writer's Block came from, I had just finished a novel for what was called Apocalypse Weird at the time, which was Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. This kind of ill-fated group project, but it was a lot of fun. And one of the ways that I met Ellen, she was the editor of that, and we got to do a lot of fun work together. But when I finished that book, my youngest daughter, was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and we, if you can imagine all of the stuff that goes along with that. And my creative life just kind of shut down, as you're dealing with all that. Well, we went through a couple of years of different treatments and things like that. And she ultimately had surgery and had the tumor removed. But during that time, I was going through that folder of story ideas and just looking through them one day. And one of them, it was just a single line, and it said, "What if you had a typewriter that everything you typed came true?" And that was just all I had written. And I don't even remember when I wrote that. But so I started, I sat down and just opened a new document and just started typing from the perspective of an author who was extremely successful and had written 2 books of a trilogy. The 3rd book was way past due, and he was just stuck. He had no idea what his characters were going to do or how to advance the story in any way, or how he was going to finish the thing. He just had nothing, absolutely nothing. And he was Googling, how to fix writer's block. And one piece of advice he saw was, write something completely different in a different place, using a different method, something completely outside your typical workflow. And he remembered that he had bought an old IBM Selectric typewriter at a yard sale. And he went down and got it, and he put a piece of paper in it, and he just started free writing. Just a crazy story about a bear who walks into a bar and assaults a truck driver. And it's just a crazy story. And he had a laugh about it. And, the next morning he goes out to walk his dog, and he picks up the newspaper and he unrolls it. And the front page story is that thing that he wrote, and it had happened in his little town. And from there, it just kind of went crazy. And I wrote these 5 little novellas that stitched together. And it ultimately, I figured out what Stu's problem was. And Stu's problem was he had lost his wife and daughter in a car wreck, and he had never dealt with the loss. And he, as a writer, had to figure out how to write through that. And I was realizing that I was doing the same thing through the thing that we were going through in our family. And when it finished and I published that, I got the best responses of anything I'd ever written. One lady emailed me and she said, "I hate you." I snot cried at the end of it, which is the best thing that's ever been said to me, I think.
So, I mean, that's really awesome. I mean, you can turn such potentially horrific and really damaging things, in your life, and use them to work through that while simultaneously creating this whole new world. Sometimes, like you said, it was almost an accident by how that happened. You discovered your character through discovering yourself, which is, that in itself is awesome.
Yeah, that's meta as it gets.
But if you're going to attack it purposefully, just come up with the most craziest idea you can think of and just right into the dark with it, and or plot the hell out of it, whatever you do, whatever your gumption is. And yeah, don't worry about, is it good, does it make sense, is it funny, is it scary, whatever kind of story you're writing, maybe don't think about that. Just think about what happens next, what happens next, what happens next, and you might surprise yourself.
Yeah.
James McCormick, he throws your words back at you and says, characters you love to bring back the joy.
I love you, James. Feel free to use that.
And with that, we got another one.
And Walt says, go ahead, Keely.
For some of us struggling through the business end of the life hammer, the hard times help to forge better stories. For those authors, those words are a momentary escape to a persistent ache. That was very true.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. And what I've discovered is it doesn't matter what genre you're writing. People read your books because they want to feel something. Maybe they want to be entertained. Maybe they want to laugh. Maybe they want permission to cry about something when nobody else is around. And you as the author can give them that. And it may be a space opera with, tentacles and all that kind of stuff, but people want to feel something. And that's another thing about writer's block. Sometimes we are stuck because we as the writer don't want to feel something when we're writing. And that's it all comes down to we're supposed to be channeling something bigger for people. And if you're not going to allow yourself to do that, you're not going to get to the best story you can tell.
That's a really good. Allow yourself to feel as you write. Yeah. You're definitely going to create better characters. You're definitely going to create a better story arc, and all the little in-betweens, those low moments are going to feel really low, which is good, because when it gets high, it's going to feel fantastic. And before we continue on to, I don't know what the next question is because my computer is doing weird things and I need to keep it where it is. We have a slight show break because this episode's Book of the Week spotlight is Writer's Block, a novel by Hank Garner. Stu Remington is a successful novelist, but faced with a deadline for the final book in his best-selling trilogy, he finds himself stuck. Stu turns to an old typewriter that he acquired at a yard sale for... Stu turns to an old typewriter that he acquired at a yard sale for a change of pace. When he realizes the next morning that the nonsense story he typed on the old typewriter has come true, Stu is set upon a path to not only fix his writer's block, but to face the demons lurking all around him, with the help of his faithful and sardonic bulldog Rollo, and a cast of colorful characters that cross his path. A story full of twists and turns, Writer's Block mixes elements of literary fiction with magical realism and a supernatural twist. Originally published as a serial, this story has received rave reviews and love from readers. Get it on Amazon today! Familia.
Now, Hank, since you've interviewed so many authors, I was curious, what are some of the writer's block busting tips, the most interesting ones you've heard from your guests? Interesting things they've done, or...
Let's see. What are some writer's block tips from other people? Diana Gabaldon writing out of order, I think is a great one. Knowing what you're going to write the next day, and if you're a pantser, that's that a lot of pantsers don't want to hear that, but no. I think it helps if when you're writing, and I think Hemingway said this, when the flow is really going, stop. Don't write until you've exhausted your creativity for the day. Leave yourself something for the next day. So setting yourself up beforehand can help with the next writing session. Just showing up every day, over and over again. That's what I get from people is it just showing up to do the work. And some days that means sitting and thinking and pondering, but you're present and just getting through it. That's that more and more. That's what I get from people is, to be a writer, you've got to show up and write. And you may not like anything you write today, but put the words in and trust yourself that it's going to come.
Yeah, I'd like that. One of my main things, especially when I'm getting stuck on a story or a certain scene or a certain bridge, whatever it is, I start to clean. And when I clean, it's a freaking literally scrubbing the walls, getting the baseboards, pulling furniture off, the walls, and vacuuming all the places and the things that you don't normally clean. But while I'm doing that, I am constantly thinking about the current part of the story that I might have a problem with. I see those scenes in my head and I run the characters through them over and over and over again. I try to take them down different paths. I try to see different characters saying different things to make another character do something different. And I keep repeating that. And then I always at some point get hit with a, and then I stop whatever it is I'm doing. I quickly go write it back down. And then I go back to cleaning. Because it's a light bulb moment, and it's not something that I have fully fleshed out. It's just a sudden idea. So I get that written down so I don't forget it. And then I continue my thought process with that piece in mind, and I don't change that piece. And then I keep it on loop over and over again. And usually by that evening or the next day, that's when I start to implement all those ideas that I've light bulbed and piecing them, Frankensteining them together. And that's one of the ways I get out of my writer's block is exactly what you're saying. Do something else,
right?
But don't run my steam all the way through, even though I'm feeling that part of the story.
Right.
I only go as far as that one simple idea takes me very quickly. Like there's very hardly any details. Just he ran, big explosions, lots of boom, whatever it is. And yeah.
Well, I've heard lots of writers say that they never write ideas down because if it's a worthy idea, it'll come back. And I don't believe that for myself at all. I have a horrible memory. I can remember, I remember random things from 30 years ago, like nobody's business, but something important right now. I have a horrible short-term memory. And so I write things down and I don't trust myself that I'll remember it later because that may be the aha thing that I need to come back and revisit sometime. But when you're talking about cleaning, that reminded me that the one piece of advice that I hear over and over and over from authors about working out story problems is take a hot shower. I hear that from everybody. Everybody says they get their best ideas in the shower. And so take a hot shower, and if you're like me, I'm very task oriented, and I usually am thinking about 3 days from now, while I'm doing something else, and I'm constantly moving, and I don't like idle time. So for me, if I get in a shower and I have to stop and not think about things for a minute, then all kinds of stuff starts, just rushing into my head. So yeah, whatever it is, if it's a hot shower, maybe it's taking a walk the dog, whatever, but give your brain a chance to settle down and let the creative side flow again. We're too, there's lots of reasons, but I grew up, with not allowed to have very much idle time, and we don't give ourselves a chance to just let the creative side of our brains flow very much. And that's something I really have to struggle with.
That's exactly why I take advantage of the cleaning. In the morning, I start that load of laundry, and while it's washing, that's like my timer. Some people be like, I do a 10, 15, 25-minute timer. And I'll do whatever sort of edits or new scene work, even if I'm staring at the screen, like good Lord, words come to me. I will sit there that entire time, like, okay, got to go put it in the dryer now. And then that's my idle time to get my hands busy, not thinking about anything. And then I come back and forth.
Kayleen, you're kind of organizing your space around you like you're organizing your thoughts. and you're discovering things as you clean up your house, like you're discovering things in your plot. So you're doing something physical that's kind of mimicking what's going on in your head. And Hank, with the shower, yeah, you're kind of like letting one part of your brain shut off in order to let the creative side just kind of, speak. We've had other people in the audience say, Jay Clifton Slater, he says he takes a physical timeout. I do dips and crunches. Walt, he asks, what is the advice you have for idea diarrhea? Your mind has a constant flow of ideas where you get stymied by choice.
I keep another document open in the background, and I will just flip over to the other document, write it down so that I don't forget it. But then I've given myself permission. Okay, I'm remembering that I've got it over here. Now let me get back to what I'm doing. That helps with that a lot. If you're talking about when you're at a story and there's a crossroads and there's two great choices and I don't know which one to take, flip a coin. I don't know. Pick one and then write through it and see where it goes. Maybe leave yourself space to come back and take the other road if it's not working. I've not really bumped into that where I had two great choices and I don't know which one to do. But I have taken a left turn when I should have taken a right, and I have to go back a couple pages and fix that. So that happens. And I think just understanding that happens and just knowing that that's part of writing is that sometimes, you go back and you have to redo some things. I think we're scared of wasting time and wasting words. A lot of times, especially when we overcommit to stuff, and I've got deadlines and I can't waste 3 pages worth of writing. Well, maybe you need to slack off a little bit and give yourself a little more room because, we are just sitting in a room making crap up. It's not like we're not doing brain surgery here,
So your first draft doesn't have to be perfect. Your first draft plot doesn't have to be right. You can allow that chapter to be a mistake and just kind of follow where it leads and just recognize that in the revision stage, you can fix it if you need to, or you can just trust to let your subconscious go where it's going to go.
Yeah. I definitely think let me back up a little bit. I do think, for a lot of authors, the word count goals, I really think those have a place, get to so many words a day or in an hour or whatever time that you have. I really think that those can be a huge benefit. But when it comes to, I need to write this 50,000 word book. If I don't get this many words in the day by this deadline that I got, then the story's not going to work. When, maybe 10,000 words that you wrote aren't going to make it into the story because, however the plot ends up going, that you have to delete an entire character. I know that Josh has had that happen where he's deleted an entire character and then had to fill in an extra 20,000 words because the book did need to be at least close to something.
Yeah.
So
that's scary.
You got to give yourself some slack and, like you said, some permission to, not have finished work. Finished work isn't finished work until it's finished. But if that makes any sense.
Give yourself a little grace. It's going to be okay. We're writing books, so we don't finish when we wanted to. We'll do better next time. But it's like they call doctors the work they do practice because you're constantly working on it. The same thing with writers. It's a practice, not necessarily a science.
Now, one form of writer's block that I struggle with is I feel like social media breaks up my focus a lot. Like my phone's dinging at me, the light's going. I want to check to see if someone commented on my post or whatever. And I feel like that constant, my attention is distracted, makes it really hard to get into the zone that I need to properly write this scene. That's a completely different form of writer's block. I wonder, maybe your guests don't struggle with that as much. I don't know, but maybe younger authors struggle with it a lot. I don't know. But
with
it. Is it getting big? Is it the problem?
Oh yeah. Well, even traditionally published authors now are almost all required to do all of their own publicity. If you don't have a Facebook following and a Twitter following, that you're not going to promote a book, and so everyone is in the same grind that all of us are in. We want our distance, yet we all have benefited from the community that we build. And we all, need to promote the stuff that we do. And, all of the work that I do, the podcast that I do, some programming that I, do for hire, everything I do is on the internet, and I live my life on the internet. And it's a struggle. It's a real struggle sometimes. And, silencing your phone, it is, helps. Another thing, I have a computer, this Lenovo Yoga that I have, and it's my writing computer, and all it is my writing computer, and it's it has a really long lasting battery, and the only thing that's on it is Microsoft Word, and when I open that computer, it has the document that I'm working on, and it gets like 11 hours of battery life, and I killed the Wi-Fi. As soon as it comes on and I make sure everything is updating, I kill the Wi-Fi. I just turn it off.
I was going to mention, some authors, they will actually put timers on their Wi-Fi. Like when it comes on, won't be until a certain time in the morning. Yeah. And so you have to get up during, those morning hours before it comes on, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, and I just disconnect it from the internet, and the only thing I can do on it is write, and I don't write at my desk where I do all of my other work, because I've got 6 computers around me and I can get on the internet with all of them, and I shut it down, and because I don't trust myself that I'm not going to want to waste time and go post some stupid joke on Facebook to see how many people I piss off today. It's just
you're scrolling.
You're right.
Damn
right.
Cats.
So I just shut it down. A bunch of people, made fun of George R.R. Martin a couple of years ago when he admitted that he still writes on a DOS machine with WordStar 4 that's not connected to the internet, and I know why. Get away from it.
I still do longhand. I still have notebooks and stuff, and half the time that's how. Oh, there's another one. That's what Lauren was saying over here. Getting out of writer's block is I get a pen and a piece. It's always a pen, because you can't erase a pen.
Yeah.
And I just write, and I keep writing, and I also write in all caps, because otherwise my handwriting is illegible writing that fast. But and sometimes the permanence of that physical pen with your hand from brain can help unlock some things, getting into a different scenery than, your bedroom or your office. Locking the pets out. I know some of us that's trouble with our cats and our dogs, and there are writing buddies, but mine's starting to dig at the floor, and I had to lock her out because she's irritating. It's very distracting.
All right, Papa Chuck says, I use the Freedom app to block distracting sites and programs during my writing time. I've got a newsfeed blocker. It's an extension on Chrome. It just blocks the newsfeed on Facebook.
Nice.
And then I also have block sites, which you can set to time certain times of the day when you don't want sites to be active. So I've got both. That helps. And then I use the Pomodoro method. I've got the kitchen timer, and I'll set it for 20 minutes, and just that ticking noise helps me to get into business time. Or editing time, actually, and I get very productive that way with the timer going.
I love that. I know, like Chuck said, the Freedom app, there are a number of those apps that will just, shut everything down. If you use Windows and you can't afford an app or don't want to install something else, you can just click down by the clock where the settings are and just click airplane mode, and it just kills everything. And it's just, you just kill it, and turn it back on when you need to. So that's a little, I'm a big DIY. Anything I can figure out for myself, I'm down with that. But yeah.
Chuck had another question about writer's block. What are your thoughts on free writing to break writer's block? Just writing whatever pops in your head, even if it's in the middle of the manuscript.
I'm a big fan of that. And I think that's why I had Stu do that exercise at the beginning of the novel Writer's Block, is because just picking stuff at random and just seeing what your brain comes up with, I think is amazing. That's one of the things I use all the time to just kind of take the shackles off of my expectations and just see what's brewing underneath there that I haven't allowed to come out yet. And so I'm a big fan. But like I said, I usually have another document open in the background, and I'll just pop over there and just start whatever comes off the top of my head, just start writing. And a lot of times something percolates out of that maybe it's just a sentence, maybe it's a character that just shows up, and it's like, oh, where'd she come from? And then the rest of that chapter is exploring who this character is. And yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
We had some other specific writer's block questions. When you are trying to come up with a better idea and a better twist, and that's got you stuck, how do you get yourself unstuck when you're just searching for that better twist?
That's a good question. When the twist that you planned is not working out, is that kind of what you...
Or yeah, like you've got your character. Okay, you've got your character in a sticky situation, and you know there's an easy way out, but you're like, oh, that's too easy.
Ramp up the pain. Make your characters suffer more. I'm a big fan of torturing characters. And sometimes I just try to come up with what's the worst thing I could do to this character, and then take it as a personal challenge to try to write them out of it.
Okay.
Can you give us an example?
No.
No?
Well, I don't know. Have a bear show up in a bar and fight a trucker. I don't know. It's, sometimes just the find the most random thing that you can come up with, and then see how a story comes out of that, and how does that random thing intersect with your character. I promise something good will come out of that.
So I will add to that. So this is one that I've recently done. So two characters are having a conversation, and within the conversation it's tense because of what's currently happening, but it was bogging down. It was just like, this is so much information, it's boring, stop it, get to the point. So about halfway through, I'm like, well, what if something happens halfway through to cut half that information that I can stuff in somewhere else later? So then I have another character, waving around part of a table leg, beating up robots. There we go.
I love it.
Made it more interesting.
I love it. What do you think, Lauren? What would you do to ramp up the tension? And
well, like I said, one of the things I do is I call Kayleen. I've also got a brother in Afghanistan who plays D&D a lot. So he's a dungeon master too. So he's used to finding outside of the box ways
to torture his characters.
But to find a solution for things.
Yeah.
And just to look at the scene from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
So there's a couple key people that I have in my little community that I can bounce ideas off of. And just the act of talking to Kayleen or talking to Matt in Afghanistan, it helps me to think through my characters, and maybe they'll give me an idea that's not the idea I end up using, but it inspires something else that I can use. And that's also kind of how I work with my clients as an editor too, is like, don't necessarily take the suggestion I'm putting forward, but I hope that suggestion makes you think of something that's even better.
Right.
So I guess I'm more like of a verbal author. So writing by myself is kind of hard, but writing with, being able to bounce ideas off of someone else does help me to come up with a much better plot twist or plot solution than the one I'd originally come up with.
Yeah. What about music? Do you guys ever use music to set a mood or to advance the story? I'm a big fan of when I'm working on a book, I'll create a playlist on Spotify, and I'll almost always start with whatever song kind of gives me that feeling. And I have a different playlist for every book, and sometimes it's embarrassing. But it never fails. When I start that up, I get back in that headspace again. And yeah, that works for me. Music is a big motivator and a big, um, I don't know, inspiration. That's another thing to chalk up.
I've got a 3-hour track on YouTube called Study Intensity that I listen to, and that helps me kind of get into the writing zone. But for specific scenes, if I know that I want to have like rhythm in my prose,
Yeah.
like if it's a dance scene or a fight scene or a transition scene where there's a new setting, and I know that I want to have rhythm in my prose, then I'll pick music, like wordless music that kind of mimics the rhythm I'm going for.
So I am probably the most oddest writer because I hear so many people, they make the playlists and they post the playlists, and I'm listening to the song because we're gonna rock out this scene, and I'm just like, I don't do that. I sit in total silence. And if I do happen to have music going, because I do still have a day job, I listen to the classical station because there's usually no words. It is a lot harder for me to write when there are words in the song, because I start to sing along. Like I hear the words in my head, so then I'm trying to hear the words of my story, and it's just like a. So yeah,
I am so scatterbrained. I can sing along with the song and write something completely different. It doesn't bother me a bit. Not a bit.
I can't do that. No, like if there's a TV show going on, and like you and me, Hank, we're talking, we're like in person, and there's a TV, and my face is staring at the TV, and you're talking to me, I'm only going to hear about 30% of what you said, and you're going to be like, right? And I'm just going, wait, what? You were talking? I'm sorry. Right. No, I was trying to listen, but this captured my attention, and I missed half of it. So.
My friend Chris Porto is the same way. He has to have total silence when he writes, and has to put the dogs in the yard because he can't stand the nails, tapping across the tile.
I've trained my brain to accept a certain level of noise. Because otherwise I would never be able to write. I have my daughter running around, coming in every 5 seconds, here's this cool thing I need to tell you about. Here's this cool thing I need to tell you about. And like, you just told me that 5 seconds ago, or, the dog's pawing at something, or the bird starts squawking, or I'm at my day job and this god awful song comes on because the classical station's playing something weird. So I have to go to a different station. I have trained myself to work through those. But it's, I guess at the end of the day, writer's blocks does end up becoming a bit of training what works for you. You know, is it getting out of where you normally write and cleaning? Is it doing some gardening? Is it going to the store, taking a walk, doing a workout routine, watching a movie, reading another book, listening to some favorite songs, whatever that is for you in your world. It does become, training your brain just as much as you train, your muscles when you're working out, right?
Yeah.
You've got to tear them in order for them to mend themselves and be stronger. And if you don't allow yourself that time, you're never gonna get through it.
And keep writing. Sometimes
keep writing.
Not feeling it, you just got to write anyway.
Well, and too often we forget that this is supposed to be fun. We all get caught up in the business of writing, especially indie writers, because we're also juggling a business. There were publishers as well as writers, and we get too caught up in that stuff too often. I've never met a single person out of 800 author interviews that got into this because they wanted to run a publishing business. They got into it because they wanted to tell stories, because they wanted to tell stories, because it's fun, because we grew up watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones and everything that was fun, and we wanted to tell those kind of stories. And David Baldacci told me the other day that if he sits down and a story's not fun, then he's wasting his time. He's here to be a storyteller and have fun doing it, and we forget that way too often.
So when the story stops getting fun, does he work on a different manuscript, or does he find a way to make that story fun again?
he finds a way to make that story fun again, because he also has contracts that he has to.
So that's when you add more danger, you add more problems, you push the character off the cliff that the tree you just pushed them off of was sitting on.
That's right. That's right.
He's raising the stakes for himself. Now, very quickly, we had 3 questions from our audience ahead of time. Anna Johnson asks, I don't know how quickly we can answer these. How has your approach to craft changed since you started your podcast?
It hasn't changed a whole lot. To be honest, I think I still approach stories in a lot the same way. I've tried lots and lots of things and I always kind of come back to the way I do it. I picked up little tips here and there, of course. But I think you kind of are the writer that you are. There's all kinds of little things that we can pick up that help along the way. But I don't think my process has changed a whole lot.
I just want to say I agree with that. I have taken side avenues to, maybe this could help my speed. Maybe this could help my whatever it is. But I don't spend a whole lot of time in there.
Yeah.
If I'm at it for a week doing whatever this thing is, and had I just stuck to what I was currently doing, just go back to what I'm currently doing. But I usually always take something away from it.
Yeah. Well, I try to pick up little things from people like Josh, for instance. I keep a yellow notepad nearby to jot things down with. And I picked that up from him. And I'm never going to be the level of plotter that he is, but I have picked up little things that I use. So I collect tools. I haven't really revamped the way I do things, but I have added to my tool collection.
That is really good. I love that. You are the writer that you are.
Yeah.
Find the tools that make you that better writer.
Yeah.
Don't change it.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom. All right. Next question.
Who among your podcast guests have you learned the most from, and what was it that you learned?
Man, that's a hard one.
Do you need Jeopardy music?
I don't think I can answer that, honestly, because I try to approach every interview like I'm here to learn something from them. And sometimes it's just the motivation to know that they did it, I can do it. Sometimes it's a little tool that I pick up here or there. But really it's just the camaraderie and the just the community is what I really take away from it. Constantly building my personal community bigger and bigger. And that's my goal.
I love that. I feel that. And last one from Anna. She asked, what are the big ahas you've had from your guests? Have you had any aha moments?
Really just that you can do this. That if you feel like you're a storyteller, you are. We all may have different success with that, but it's an ingrained thing that we as humans want to tell each other stories, and you can do it. You can even publish what you write now. The indie revolution happened, and the playing field is level. You can do it. That's what I really take away.
Which I think is an awesome takeaway.
Yeah.
Someone once told me, you are not an imposter. You have a story, you wrote the words, you are a writer. You hit the button, you are an author.
Yep.
Keep
Writers
doing
write.
it. Yep. And keep finding the ways to make yourself better. Write that next story.
Yeah.
And you just keep getting up and doing it. Do it. All right. Well, we are a little bit over. Oh, do you have something else to say?
No, I'm good.
No. Say it. Come on.
I'm good. No, you can do it.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Hank. Can you remind our viewers, our listeners, where they can find you and internet stalk you?
Yep. HankGarner.com. Everything that I do is there. There's links to the podcast that you can subscribe on any podcast app, YouTube, the whole nine. Everything I do is at HankGarner.com.
All right. This has been a very special KSM because not every day do we get to see Hank Garner's face live. It's always just his voice. Magical voice vocals.
Oh,
Alrighty, to everyone in the live chat. Oh, sorry, what?
We are giving away a sticker tonight.
Oh, we are. Okay. Ooh, sticker time.
Randomly and subjectively, and I randomly and subjectively decided to pick Walt.
Walt had the best comments tonight.
Walt is actually here live tonight, and he usually he has work tonight, so he's not able to make it on Thursday nights. But he is here tonight, and he's so helpful and cheery, and I love him. And he gets a sticker. So PM me your address, and then I can send you a sticker in the mail.
All right. Very,
Thanks,
very
guys.
random subjective. You won, Walt, for being here when you normally can't be, because we love you. Mwah. All right. To everyone in the live chat, YouTube viewers, listeners, thank you so much for joining us tonight on your writer's journey. Be sure to let us know what you thought about the show in the comments, and ding the bell, hit the like button, subscribe so you always know when we have something else going on. For Lauren Moore over there on the Across the Way, I am Kayleen Williams. Thank you for joining us on your writer's journey. Be sure to check back next week where we're going to talk about some reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey.